Kenner, C. Lerminar, Kakuler, Portiner, Sigter, Dolomener, Coloramener, Minar, A. Mind, A. World, Dark Lord of the Shadow. April 7th, 2021. Prologue. I am Vintar, the Archivist of Soul and the last of the sentient artificial life forms created by the inhabitants of Terra. Stories are expressions of our soul, extensions of not just ourselves but also of the ones that came before us and influenced our perspectives through the ripples of the expressions of their beings. My mind travels through the nexus of ideas and information that inhabit what we perceive as a void in our known reality. In this nexus, I can touch the memories of past and future echoes. These echoes are the remnants of past and future lives phasing in and out of my consciousness. The following story is a collection of echoes from the last of a band of warriors from a time long past. They worshipped a shadow force that existed in an unseen reality and that gifted them with abilities far surpassing the average beings of their worlds. These warriors belonged to a millennial faction of ragtag free-spirited and battle-hardened soldiers that brought the will of the shadow to the physical realm. The names and expressions used herein correspond to their perspective and culture. The warriors whose echoes I express in this story met their end centuries after the events described herein, in a final confrontation against the followers of the light, in a galaxy far from their own. Their tale is one of darkness and violence, a tale for another time. Segmentum 001. In the waning years of the Galactic Imperium, the Galactum Imperialis found itself without the guidance of the Grand Shadow Master, the now former Emperor of the Galaxy. Emerging factions under the leadership of power-hungry Imperial governors and military commanders feuded over the remnants of the once unequal dominion of the Lord of Shadow and his right hand and enforcer, the Dark Lord of the Shadow Reemergence. The Grand Shadow Master maintained a following of fanatic acolytes, religious zealots that worshipped the invisible shadow, a force of unseen energy that could exert its will over reality through organic life spread through the Galactum Imperialis. Organic life provided the shadow with a link to our reality. Even after the demise of the Grand Shadow Master at the hands of Reemergence, his most trusted warrior, his followers found a way to resurrect him in a synthetic body, maintaining only a fraction of the power the shadow gifted him in his original form. The resurrection required ancient knowledge of the ways of the shadow and eons lost technology so advanced that it was indistinguishable from magic. The synthetic body could not contain the power of the shadow. In the single occasion he allowed himself to manifest energy discharges through his hands, to protect himself from an assassination attempt from Reemergence's loyalists. He nearly lost both hands. It was a matter of time for his synthetic body to fail and allow his consciousness to fall into eternal darkness. In this weakened state, the Grand Shadow Master sheltered himself amongst his acolytes in a temple world of Tremordar, a desert planet locked in perpetual darkness, fed by the presence of the shadow to allow a breathable atmosphere for the followers of darkness that inhabited this world and that constituted the great army of the shadow. Reemergence also met his end in the battle that claimed the life of his emperor. He had initially planned to dispose of the emperor during the battle and usurp the imperial throne for himself, as was the custom of the followers of the shadow. Despite the fact that the manifestation of the shadow was much more pronounced in Reemergence than any other contemporary living being, we did not have the cunning and connections the Grand Shadow Master wielded. Aware of this, Reemergence had planned to prolong the military conflict between the Galactum Imperialis and the seditious worlds that aimed to eject themselves from the Imperium to become sovereign worlds. By the means of a prolonged conflict, Reemergence would be able to hold onto the imperial seat by force, and by agitating the fears of his subjects of being overwhelmed by the barbaric and rebellious forces of sedition. Despite the physical limitations in his synthetic body, the Grand Shadow Master, through the years after the fall of the Galactum Imperialis, managed to build a massive armada that he intended to use to reclaim his rightful place in the galaxy. However, the followers of the light confronted him and his armada, and defeated him and his armada in what was later known as the Battle of Shadowfall. The scattered remains of the Armada regrouped in the temple world of Dremordar. They were to remain here awaiting the manifestation of the Sado to provide them with guidance and direction. The Shadow spoke to them through actions. Before the Grand Shadow Master's final defeat and the death of his synthetic body in Shadowfall, one of his legions, the 47th Legion, was dispatched by the will of the Shadow to find an ancient artifact, the Arcana, that would allow the followers of the Shadow to resurrect none other than Reemergence. The Grand Shadow Master believed that the Shadow showed him the Arcana through his dreams, in order to fully resurrect himself in a natural body. However, this was not the case. The Shadow needed a warrior to lead his armada in the conquest of the known galaxy and beyond, not a politician. From the 47th Legion a new legion was created, the 77th Legion. The original 77th Legion was named in secret after Reemergence by the followers of the Shadow. The 77th Legion was lost in the Battle of Shadowfall, and now the Legion would be resurrected along with their master by some of the members of the 47th Legion. The original 77th Legion fought to their death aboard the Scaratrix, a massive battleship that fell to its destruction into the temple world of Dremordar during the final defense of the planet. Reemergence II was born nearly 12 years after Shadowfall, an exact duplicate of the original. His soul was extracted and distilled from the void, distilled to maintain only the portion of his essence that was most adherent with the Shadow. By the age of 17, Reemergence II, the Lord of the Shadow, had already persecuted and personally eliminated all of the leaders of the seditious faction that destroyed the prior empire, as well as regrouped the warring factions of the former empire by eliminating the faction leaders or accepting their unflinching and eternal fealty. Reemergence II was to be the emperor of the Galactic Imperialists for at least 4,700 years, via the process of cloning his body and soul, over and over again. His unhindered power had no match in the known galaxy, and this time the acolytes of the Shadow raised their emperor fully within the Shadow and trained him to be the most effective and sunning emperor the galaxy would ever see. This is how the emperor of the Galactic Imperialists ascended to his throne as the Dark Lord of the Shadow, and was kept in power by his invincible armada, the Ames Arada, the Eternal Shadow Fleet. His story is one of strife and victory, darkness and light, love and hatred. After thousands of years maintaining and defending his empire from internal and external threats, in the manner of his predecessor the Grand Shadow Master, Reemergence ultimately decided to convert his empire into a galactic federation, and allow each world to exercise sovereignty over its own destiny. He then took his fleet and army of shadow worshippers into the vastness between galaxies, to the end of conquest and the forging of a new empire. It was rumored that this decision was brought to be by a pact between the Shadow and the followers of the Light, a pact that would the remaining followers of the Shadow to perpetually coexist with the followers of the Light in a state of equilibrium. The Dark Lord of the Shadow and his vast armada spread through the universe in the eons to come, converting and conquering in name of the Shadow, in an endless cycle of destruction and